Good morning. Welcome to our Zoom Love Circle. And this morning, we're talking about the topic, This Is It. Perhaps, Sunyata, you would like to share with us what prompted you to discuss the topic, This Is It?
I like the emphasis. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. Initially, I wanted to do the subject, the death of the seeker. But that might be a bit strong. Because the conversation is, if this is it, then there's no division. There's only it. And this is it. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to seek. There's nothing to add on. How much can you say about this? We can go into rolling stories. First one I'm going to do is I'm getting warm. It's me getting used to being in Adelaide after living in Queensland for 9 years. It's nice and cozy. It's getting there. All right. The end of the seeker. Perhaps we'll start here. Have a chat about what that may mean individually. What would life be without the seeker? If this is it, then there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to add on. There's no grand end. There's no finishing point. There's no beginning. There's no end. There's no middle. There's no in between. There's no oneness. It's all just happening. There's no arrival. No enlightenment. This is perfect as it is. So where do we put the seeker? Because the seeker is a very, very dominant part of who we be. In fact, beingness is the seeker. Every moment is the seeker. It's positioned in the design of the self, almost from the beginning, not the very beginning. Because at first, we're in awe. We don't learn to say no until we're about 2.5. And then we get this separation between the state of awe, what we might call potency, connectedness, oneness, bliss, perhaps, flow, light, or a number of things, innocence, perhaps, freedom might be the important one, the sense of freedom. And this is it. There is no now. There's no here. Because we know by now the body-mind perception fails us. It's all too slow. So that center that we be, we will focus on consciousness, the arrival of consciousness, and say, I'm awake. I'm awake. I get a flash of light or something. I'm awake. This is it. But the seeker persists. The seeker persists. There's an appetite for more, for something. It's not good enough. Never good enough. I would say it's perfect, just as it is. So perhaps we can have a chat about this.
I have a question. Do non-seekers have any curiosity at all?
It can't be a non-seeker if there's a seeker. It can't be an opposite to the seeker. Curiosity is the nature of being. Is there no being? Beingness happens. Nothing static. There's life. There's only life. Relatedness of thing to thing, that definition we call the self, our preoccupation with predilections. Life grows even within the things that we hold within a narrow scope. There's growth even if we try to hold it down to just this. There's more that happens. So curiosity is secondary. It goes, oh, look, there's more here, even though I'm holding it to this. This is it. There's a tension in it. But if that tension were just relaxed, it's exactly the same. Totally relaxed as it is. It's perfect. So there is no non-seeker, but we think there's a seeker. We think the seeker is important. We think our will is important. We think if we don't have this mechanism, nothing will happen. But everything's happening. It's just happening. And we're responding to it. We're responding to it. And in the response to that, it's perfect. It has us do the things we do. Even the self appears in that. It's not oneness. It's not even now, because that's too dependent on perception. It's not dependent even on perception. It's greater than perception. It's greater than anything that we can perceive, because we can't. But we know it's here. We can apperceive it. When we relax, everything's okay. Perhaps the biggest things we might choose is I could relax and not do the shopping this afternoon. Any choices really small, are easy. And it is very, very easy. They don't do that. Okay, I won't do that. This will create disturbance. Oh, this is really obvious. Reality. Reality is here in it. Not that we perceive reality. We can't perceive reality, but reality is here. So the seeker and the non-seeker are unnecessary. It's just happening. And we're responding or reacting. And that's just happening. And that's perfect. Might not look perfect. If there's pain in it, it might not feel perfect. We can look at time scales and things and forms and thingness and the way that those things organize themselves and think that we've got some type of control over it. But if we relax to that, even in pain, these things settle down and we see the perfection again. So even in hindsight, there's a perfection. Even in remembrance of great suffering, there's perfection. Was it, has this be this? There's nothing behind it. It's just happening.
Perhaps a question that is relevant to the audience. How does a non seeker appear? Do they live very differently to a seeker? How do they live differently? How do we identify one stopped seeking? Because recently I have this interest to try out psychedelic medicine. My point is that I have curiosity, and particularly being a spiritual healer, I think it is relevant for me to be exposed to such a medicine to try it out. Therefore, I can be a point of a reference if I have to point my client to a certain direction. There's this validity in me to experience this. Does that disqualify me as a non-seeker? Not that I'm qualifying myself as a non-seeker. I just wanted to hear your point of view, and this might be relevant to our audience experience as well.
What you're bringing up is very interesting, because what is it that we seek in these exotic experiences? But
Not that I'm
you're putting,
seeking an experiences.
can I respond completely? But you're putting it into a particular context. So as a healer, you're saying, okay, now for where we are in our freedom, we're looking at a much broader scope than what we've ever had freedom to exercise. So we can actually talk about these types of things openly and exercise it if you choose and see what that experience is. Of course, there's going to be public response. People have their morality and their preconditioning, and we all have that preconditioning. The way things occur is if there's any reaction to that, well, that's in the other to actually deal with. If there's a judgment that goes against you for exercising that freedom, then for those who react to it, it's into them where the experience will happen. This will just happen. And they'll have to make whatever adjustment they'll have to make if they say they're okay about that. But I think most people these days would understand that when it comes to the realm of spiritual healing, there's many things that one needs to expose themselves to, have a broad understanding of ways of going. If we were dealing with someone who is intensely and psychically disturbed, would we throw ourselves into the pit to understand that? This is another way of considering it, if we're just contemplating it and see what the consequences are of that. I think foremost is, what do we seek? That's really what it is. I mean, when we do these things out of ignorance, well, all we can do is say, I'm ignorant. And then we can learn to be indifferent, even about those things that kill us physically. We can be indifferent. these things. Wisdom will occur at some stage. At some point, you'll make a choice that you don't want to lose all your teeth, sort of going into some type of physical deprivation or something for seeking out God or the like. And, such extremes we do. I certainly can say I have, gone to extreme states in my seeking to experience those higher qualities for what I have seen to be as worthy of seeking. And how we justify that, well, does it have a clear rationale? If we're very, very careful, perhaps yes. The investigation is clear and easy. Cherie, can I ask you
Yeah.
a question?
Yes.
Are you a meditator?
Well, probably not formally. I did a little bit with my dad, and he's done quite a lot. When I did it with my dad, I did like a whole day retreat, and then I had like a flashback of something. I felt like a bit disturbed after that. I didn't want to go into a state of sadness because I had to work and things like that.
All right,
But
good.
with
Yeah,
Apple, I managed to clear a bit in a different way, like in a way that I was ready for, and still manage my life at the same time. So my dad is all into meditation, but his life allows him to be where I need to work still.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's all really, really valid, and it brings up many, many points. Exactly, how this occurs. Perhaps the things that we sacrifice for what might be necessary. Are we talking about the seeker or what is necessary? What comes before us? All of a sudden, we can see that there's something perhaps hidden, a quality that's hidden. And it's there, and we know in an instant that has a lot of bearing on us in our lives.
And my dad, my dad has done a lot of meditation, and he still doesn't. I still don't have a flowing relationship with him.
Right. Well, would you say would be his responsibility as a meditator or yours as a non-meditator? And sorry for putting those four together because
I
they're
think
not.
that we're just on different paths, and we don't have to be close to each other. So it's okay if we just live our separate lives. We don't have to, we can let each other just be.
Excellent. Yeah, good. Well, that just shows another aspect of where the seeker is just not necessary.
Yeah.
It's perfect as it is in its imperfection. People say, "Oh, well, you have to have a perfect relationship with your parents, or you have to have, this, that, this, that, this is that, that is this is that, but that isn't this."
When I did the Buddhist teachings, the Japanese ones with the Japanese fire ceremonies and the Shinto prayers, they'd build like quite high energy and in the temple. But it was a bit I explained to, how do you pronounce the name? Ekomananda?
Ekomananda?
That it was a little bit extreme for me. So he asked me to go to Melbourne, and I wanted to stay here with my family. So I'm happy to meditate, but I want to have it in balance for me. Yeah.
I think you're pointing out some important points that as it is, everything has its own time. Everything has its own way. Everything has its own velocity. Everything has its own okayness, and we accept that. And what you're expressing to me is that yes, you understand that for yourself, that all has its own time. There's
Yeah.
some things there that perhaps you'd like to look at a little deeper. Is that the seeker, or is that the self?
Yeah, it gets a bit confusing. But when I met Apple, I felt the same high energy like in the temple. So I hadn't felt that energy for a long time. And it's kind of rare. So I felt like there must be some connection to something higher. And it was really nice.
I agree with you, Sheree. I enjoy the temple spaces, and
So where does that energy come from? Is it from because you guys meditate all the time?
all right, here we go. Is it
I
about
went to
meditation? Yeah, well,
yeah, I
it's
went
an
to
interesting. It's a very, very interesting point. Because first you have to ask yourself, what is meditation? And
yeah,
there's all these prohibitions and prescriptions of how meditation is meant to be, or how you come to effective meditation. Perhaps meditation is the natural state,
yeah,
and your recognition of these qualities is actually just a reflection of your own inner beingness. It's just a quality that you love about you-ness and connectedness with the world. And this separation isn't here at all. It's just that you have that opportunity or that vehicle to see yourself in that through that other.
yeah. I think
So,
Ekomananda is teaching me, helping me realize that there's those high consciousness feelings, and also it's okay to feel the low, like the sadness, and like just and it, like it's all of it. It's fine. Both is fine.
excellent.
All of it's fine.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm happy to learn to meditate into my life a little bit, because
All right.
it keeps me a bit more grounded, not so much in my head.
Can I ask you what you mean by being in your head?
Just thinking a lot.
Are you thinking, or thought arises?
Um, I don't know.
It's interesting if you look at what was just happening then, look at it very, very carefully. Perhaps focus Ekomananda on Sri for a moment. If you wouldn't mind, put the camera on Sri Ekomananda, or we have to wait for. And you just contemplate and watch thought arise. Just watch thought arise.
Yeah, it's just getting used to a more peaceful.
But before you say anything about it, just stop
Mm,
and just watch thought for a moment. Deliberately watch thought. Just watch the thought.
it just disappeared.
Funny about that. So it's just happening. Thoughts arising.
Yes, all the time.
We think it's the self, but
Which it
you need that to be
drives me
pointed out.
crazy.
Sometimes we do need some teaching, just so that quality could be pointed out. Otherwise, we think that that quality is not in us. There's too much specialness put around meditation.
Mm.
And in reality, you have that quality in you. You just have to see it
anytime.
anytime, always. Because every single time, thoughts just arising, and in between that is meditation. And it's like if we define ourselves as something, we're caught in the trap of that thing. So we say, I am my thought. Well, because we understand our thought and it feels pretty close and it's around the subjects and matter which interest us, you see, we say it's us. But if you
It's
look really carefully,
conditioning.
there's a lot more in it. There's a lot more in thought than just our interest. I mean, this is just an inquiry. And just think about this for a moment. We're thinking about thought, and you think about thought, and all of a sudden there's no thought other than thinking about thought. So we're trying to think about thought, but there's no thought there. You can conjure it up. You can say dad. You can say mum, you can say dad, you can say myself, you put a name to things, and then it's on. And we'll find
Ekomananda
good.
was pointing out yesterday the importance of unconditional love. And this is a love circle, but to love everybody is quite a, it's a, I really like her words.
Right, okay. Well, unconditional love doesn't mean that you change anything. Unconditional love is to say everything's perfect as it is. Unconditional love is loving it as it is, with all its peculiarities, with the distances and supposed separations. Because there aren't any separations. There's space, bodies are positioned, mind ideas come up, but there's no separation. Not even death.
So we don't have to worry about like World War III or anything.
Well, if it occurs to you, then it will occur to you, and the contemplation will occur to you. But is that you, or is that just thought of World War III coming up? and perhaps it's valid for this time that your intelligence meets that. Because it's just happening. I mean, we'd say put down your gun, but if you're facing someone with another gun, it might be a little bit difficult. Who puts a gun down first? It's easy for us, you know what I mean? It's easy for us from here to sort of say, put down your gun, because there's no one facing you with one. But if you're put in that situation, and we can contemplate these horrible circumstances in life, really removed. Like I'm doing a painting on the subject at the moment. It's horrible. It's like, people falling from heaven and dying, and people just sitting there with wine glasses watching like it's just happening on your screen.
So do you have any intuition on anything that we need to hear?
That was a really big question. This is it. Just let it be. I think it's in your own, it's in our place to be in our peace. And sometimes peace is disturbed. It's also in our place to see what that is. It's all just happening. The self isn't so important in all of this. Self is just one little part of it. If you can see what I'm saying. The self is sort of like a suit that we put on. I mean, it might preoccupy us all day. And being in ourself might be really important. Or it might only need to be that big, because we have other bearings that demand, things to be the way they are. So, we're free. We're
And is it
free.
okay if I ask how you learnt to meditate?
By trial and error, but I would say that the thing is that we perhaps not having a teacher when it comes to all the prohibitions and prescriptions around religion, it makes it really awkward. Like you said, you go, well, I can't take off time. I've got 5 kids. I don't have time. So, I can choose perhaps a better vocation. I'll become a gardener and practice Zen or something. And so, in those, and we design, or, you take up yoga or something, and you give yourself 20 minutes, an enjoyable asana when the body's all chilled, and you just relax into it. But I think once you see it, that you're not thought, then there's no mind thing, this preoccupation with trying to get away from the mind. You can see it. You're not the mind. In fact, the mind is a phantom. In terms of dealing with the body and our perceptions and non-perceptions and our sensitivities, well, all those things are happening. You coordinate nicely with your partner. He gives you the grace to be able to do yoga and do what you're needing to do while he does breakfast. But then you do other, things just happen. And if you're in a loving space and you're exercising love, well, sometimes you might have a little breakdown. You disagree about something. And so you have a little lay down and you work that out. I'll go have a little lay down and work that out and say, am I okay about that?
I know.
You know what I mean? And that's okay. Like we all, and that's all perfect too. And to be able to have that without sort of being condemned for it, sort of say, oh, you had to have a lay down, you had a breakdown, yeah.
I know.
That's all right. And work through that.
Sometimes it looks easier to be Chris.
To be what?
Sometimes it looks easier to be like Chris, like more simple and organised. But that's just an illusion. He's probably just finds it challenging to be Chris too.
Oh, that's really lovely. Well, to me, that just sounds like an expression of love. I think he would feel quite endeared to you by you saying such a thing. That's an expression of love, and that's an expression of the example of how it works.
And he's not interested in all this sort of stuff, but that's okay too.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Yeah, of course it is. Because he has his own way, and perhaps he can get that drink through you.
Yeah. Sometimes he has these night terrors at night. That's just comes up. The body purifies the emotions any way it can, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's good to have help. Sometimes it's good to have the freedom to be able to communicate it. You need some help. I think we need to understand no matter where we are. Like
Ekomanda's so perfect because she's a beautiful female, and it's a very rare. Like, it's nice to come and have that space to share with her.
I totally agree. So that sounds like an Ekomananda advert. It's lovely. No, she's very, very steady, very, very strong. Her meditation is very, very strong. And
thank you for that.
So, yes. And also the disciplines, like where people do these exercises in particular way. We have different predilections and we have different skills and abilities and different sensitivities, and it's really important that you be total in yourself. And I don't mean something that's self-indulgent, but I do mean that too. You have to sort of go through it. It's important. There's nothing that can be excluded. I mean, we're smart enough to know, not to carelessly hurt, hopefully by now, be considerate. And, so freedom is really, really important. And knowing that you're not alone too. There is no separation. We're all, we're not just a body, a ghost in a machine body thing, living out sort of a life by itself, in somewhat approximation to other beings. It's actually all
Yeah, it was
just one.
funny how like Chris and I wanted to move forward, and this is something that was coming up, and so I asked for. I put my foot down and said, I'm not going to go further and build this house if this doesn't get resolved, because it was too.
Yeah.
It wasn't harmonious. And then I just saw Ekomananda's webpage, and it just like shined really bright at me. And
Yes.
yeah, it was amazing. There's lots of people I'd like to give her a card to, but I'll have to pick the cards up next time. I forgot.
It's really lovely. That's really sweet. Well, look, that unconditional love and what sort of comes through it, and
Yeah,
Want
amazing.
to
how we work together.
quickly.
I think there are new ways of doing things, and creativity is happening within us all the time. And it's making our choices really, our relationships, even desire is okay. Moving, everything's okay. We're in a place where collectively there's more maturity now to work closely together, and to have your doubts and to have your criticisms is fine too. To sort of work through all these things, it's really important. It's all okay. It's all part of this, and the human thing, the body, and the way thoughts arise inside of us have their own predilection, and we tag it as being ourself. But it has its place in the way that this all works. It has its beauty too, in the way that this all works, even when it trips over itself, even when perhaps it feels like needing a little bit more of others around them and feels a little bit inadequate. Even that has its beauty because it gives an opportunity for others to show their love. You can see, like, this has its own perfection. And if we look we can see all forms of darkness and breakdown and issues and problems too. That's the ability of thought and mind and intellect, if we wish to direct it that way, and that's all fine, and know that's just that. That's just that.
Thank you.
Yes, but it's not this. This is this. This is now.
Can I ask
This is
a
this.
question? Do non-seekers have no desires? Because they stop seeking for anything at all. Not the money, not the status, not the fame, not the power, not the knowledge, not liberation, not enlightenment. No more questions, no more desires. Is that how one would define non-seekers?
It's hard to put thought to it, because the moment you put thought to it, then you could see that there's a very, very fine line in what we call the self and the way things happen. And there's so much emphasis placed on the development of us as a self for our survival and well-being, for what we call our willfulness and our self-empowerment, that we lose sight that this is just happening. The self is also just happening, that everything is being supported in the way that it's just happening. So what occurs as the self-willing, like this self, Sunyata, wakes up and it has a predilection. It knows it needs to make a set of communications. It's there. It's there, prominent. And so the body comes, the consciousness arises. I am goes. Time to get out of bed, and Sunyata this morning was going, well, perhaps a little bit more rest. Perhaps a little bit more rest. So I let it have a little bit more rest. And I got to a point where I thought, well, it must be probably about 6 o'clock. Best get up now. It was 3:30. So the self got up and did what it did, and it did things perfectly for what it needed to do in the way that things were arising, occurred to it. And this is the self. It's all about communication. There was a little moment for painting and contemplating painting, which is what the self does too. There was also room for the mind to arise and go into some critique. There was also time to look into the world and to see a little bit of news. All these things occur. They just arise, and you just trust it because you love the self. It just arises. Back to your question: is there? I would simply put it: is there any need for the seeker? More so. Is there a need for the seeker, or is it good enough that it's just happening? Then, for how it works within the self, one has to trust it. Look very, very carefully. Perhaps that demands some maturity, some contemplating, some thoughtfulness, being okay about thinking, being okay about being challenged, even being okay about challenging, perhaps even, and going into behaviors where perhaps you don't think that's so nice. It's not a way that you would like to be or appear to be, even. All these qualities, but they arise. They arise. And there's thoughtfulness as well. And being okay about thoughtfulness as well, because it arises, and it arises around those things of importance. Like, weeds grow around a flower bed, or the way flowers just grow. I mean, it's a corny metaphor, but, okay, some things are not our choice and they appear as weeds. And so we, just let the flowers grow. Other times we look at the weeds pretty carefully and say, oh, that's dandelion, that's herbs, that's good, let it be. It doesn't hurt. It's contributing. It's a bit bitter. If I were to say that, perhaps, it might sound a little bit harsh, a little bit bitter, but, maybe that's love too. Maybe that's healing too. Maybe that's medicine too. Maybe that's goodness too. And being with it fully, letting thought be there. This idea of the no mind, being troubled by mind. Well, I think for the coming back to Cherie's point before about the meditator, if I could, I think the meditator is just simply here. It's part of the quality of what it is to be human. And you don't have to have golden tickets or be a Buddhist or be try to be like Buddha or try to be like Jesus or try to be like this, because the qualities of that, for whatever is in you anyway. Whatever's necessary is in you anyway. All it needs to do is be made okay to be seen. So, oh, actually, look, I haven't thought any troubling thoughts all day. Oh, that's interesting. They never arose. I guess they didn't need to be thought about. Or today I'm concerned with something, is there something that I can do? Sometimes you have, the Third World War, there's, I can't say to everyone, put down your guns. It sounds too simplistic. Do we have to have all this difficulty? Do we have to have these disagreements? It's not my place to say, as a self, myself is this big in this world. It might be all cosmic and all wonderful and reaching out to the extremities of everything. I might be in absolute bliss, but this willful power, which is what we're, very often, seeking for power. Not my place to do. Maybe it is, maybe today, just the three of us having a little chat, some wonderful being comes forward and they hear a quality between our conversation, something clicks, and they know how to stop everything. We don't know how anything's really working. We just have to go along. The seeker's not necessary. But for experience, you go, well, would you like a glass of wine? Maybe not. Like, make a choice between things. Should I do this? Maybe not. Maybe yes. It's okay. Easy. Or I choose it for myself, and I choose the consequence myself. All done in maturity and love and closeness and openness. I think open communication is really important, particularly if you're in a love relationship. Be in good communication. Just simple. Putting something forward, listening to the other, experiencing one another. Gives you an opportunity it gives you a window, perhaps where the self wouldn't have such insights. And that's with all our relatedness. It's not just our one particular love relationship. We've got many love relationships. And I don't mean to be fickle about that. Everything is just happening. Everything is just happening. It all just arises like we wake up in the morning. And if and sometimes we need to really work at it and, put ourselves out a little bit. It's never that hard. We probably sort of make more noise about it that's necessary. But maybe, and then there's some things that are really big and you need some help and you need to say, I need help. I need wisdom. I need, I need to be heard. I need to go this way. All fine. It's all just happening. It is this.
So, Ekomananda, are you going to go forward and try psychedelics?
Very good.
With all respect, like with with sincerity. Sorry.
I have been just silently sitting behind and listening to the conversation between you and Sunyata. Lots of wisdom, jewels, insight shining through. To answer your question, I don't know yet. If I go ahead, I think that's okay. If I don't, that is also okay. Sunyata has pointed out is more so the impact that it might has on the people who surround me. This is us being in the body that we be considerate to the loved ones. In essence, I don't have a need for anything. My desires are very, very few these days. And yes, there might be interest, there might be curiosities that pop up in the body, and we just look at it, we laugh at it, and we don't take it personal. We don't give the self a hard time. We make it okay. And we allow the self to body to make mistakes. And it's all right. We don't have expectation on the self. And this is public. And in my life, I have declared my life is actually public. We share stories. We share our, thought, if there's something called thought. And I'm sharing my flaws. And it's all right. And people are projecting that a teacher, a master needs to behave like this, like this, like that. If she falls on this occasion, then she's not perfect. She's not my teacher anymore. She disappointed me. And this is the mind. We stop that. If it resonates with you, go ahead. If it doesn't work, come back to me. And life is that simple. Don't complicate it. Whatever that you wanted to do, you feel like doing today, and go for it. And people live for their aspiration, live for their dreams. And if the dream, if it does not come true, it's okay. If the stories are unpleasant, that's also okay. Look at it carefully, how the stories are made, how we become the stories. Stop that. Because in that, we allow the stories to become us. We allow the self to identify with the story. This is what happened in the past, and now I'm suffering. You know that. The stories happens anyway. Let it be. There's no need to change the stories. When you stop to change the story changes itself. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.